Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for the Mandalorian Season 3 finale, The Return. As you can see, I felt like I needed to bust out the anniversary jacket because I was feeling special today. This is a historic moment in Star Wars history. They unfortunately killed my baby, the Darksaber. I'm sure they'll make a new one. They'll be like, look, we found the crystal and stuff like that, extra scenes that they'll throw in later as flashbacks. I'm curious how that's going to play out because my favorite thing about the Darksaber is the fact that it's the only lightsaber that's legit, like just a straight blade. Like there is one side, as you can see with how it's kind of pointing and curved, one side is for striking, the other side, technically it's all laser, so I guess the blocking side is exactly the same because there is no like sharpness and all that stuff, but one side is for striking specifically. That's how it looks. So I'm curious if they do something else, will they make it in honor of that sort of style? Because it's the only saber that we have that even does that. It's only the Darksaber. So I feel like if they make us another one, it has to fall in line with that. Even if it's a different design, I don't know if they would do something that really blow my mind, make a double-sided Darksaber that's like straight blades or something. That would be insane. I don't see that happening, but just saying, that would be sick. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. I would assume that I would hope, that's, like I said, that's one of the big things about it. Aside from it being black, of course, the inversion of the color, the almost flatness of the blade is like, those are the two things that make it so special. So they have to stick with that, but still do a new design. And that's going to be really interesting to see. But holy crap, that was just one historic moment in an amazing episode, for me at least. I'm curious to see what other people think about this one, considering the thoughts of the season as a whole. I loved it. Personally, I would honestly consider it my favorite season. I know that that's crazy for most people. I know Luke came back at the end of the last season, but that didn't hit me as much as I love Star Wars. Like it was just like, even with that being, it was just funny, growing up on Star Wars, like Star Wars was the first movie I ever saw in theaters, as a kid. So it's funny growing up with that, I still just ended up loving Mandalorians the most. And it wasn't even from Boba Fett. It actually was because of the animation. And yet I still grew up, just like a lot of other people, maybe not for, it's not the exact same amount of time. Maybe I caught it just a little bit earlier. So it wasn't like, Luke and stuff, even though I still love Luke. He is one of my favorites. But it just didn't hit me as much. And then this series in general, adding in the Darksaber, that got me. The last, episode, as well as this one, I didn't cry this time, but last time I did. But man, for sure, this show is my favorite, without a doubt. And this was my favorite season because it's just all Mandalorians. Like, that is what I love. It's my favorite thing, like everything Star Wars. Clone Wars stuff, best stuff is Mandalorian stuff. Rebels, the best stuff is the Mandalorian stuff. And I'm excited because one of those characters is just a full-on Mandalorian going into more live action stuff, and that could still bring in the other Mandalorians because they have met Bo-Katan. So when we go into Ahsoka, Bo-Katan could still show up. They could still give us little bits and pieces of what's going on with these characters moving into Ahsoka. They didn't really tease anything at the end, like leading into it, but they could call back to it for sure in Ahsoka. Like obviously all that stuff is said and done, but I'm sure all this stuff was said and done super far in advance. We're getting to the point of them adding in all these live action shows specifically, not just animated stuff, but all these live action shows. Like they're doing like the push, like the spread is officially coming now where we're getting multiple stuff. We're getting Ahsoka. It's like the next big thing. So it's an interesting era for Star Wars, but it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan, especially next week. We got Survivor, Jedi Survivor coming out. I am so hyped for that game. The last game I love. I know this is just me talking about how much I love Star Wars, but this was one of those episodes I was like, man, this is why I love Star Wars. But I'm very excited. This was a great episode. If it was next week, that would be the craziest Thursday of my life, in between seeing this finale and then waiting for Jedi Survivor. So it's probably good that I got like a week, because I'm not going to lose my mind like, oh my God, I'm between these two great things. But this was great. I'm excited for that game. And I'm excited for where we're headed. Season 4 of The Mandalorian, whatever that ends up being, especially after the other shows that we're about to get. Although I guess only Ahsoka would really count because the Acolyte is like set way in the past. But they could do a million things in Ahsoka. We have no idea who's going to need to be brought in because of them dealing with Thrawn again. There's just a whole set of things there. So there's a lot of ways that they can give us clues as to what is the future of Mandalore in this exact space. Like we may not have to wait until season 4 to figure out our answer. They may have just thrown it in there one episode even. It's like, oh, there's Bo-Katan, or oh, there's Din, because of a random thing, because him now potentially at the end having these assignments, he could totally be a guest star in the new show. They could easily do it, and I would love to see that happen. It seems like they already got a buttload of stuff crammed in there with other Sith and new people, new Sith coming in. There's a lot there. But also, this season I felt wrapped up really well, even with all the issues that a lot of people had. I personally didn't, because I was still enjoying each episode individually. But with everything they've done, this season still ended up kind of wrapping up, and it's like, okay, hey, this worked. They could easily do that in like one episode just to like kind of show us like bits and pieces of where people are. So I don't know. We might get our answer for where things are headed sooner than we think, because they could easily do it in Ahsoka, and it would make, you know, perfect sense. Just throw in an episode. Here's where things are headed. Here's a bit of more of a definitive answer on exactly what's happening with Din and now Din Grogu, which that was another twist. I didn't think about that till I watched like a review, and they were like, oh yeah, because they put Din before Grogu, that means Din Djarin's name is basically said like a Japanese name where it's last name first. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. His name, if we said, you know, in the States, who just first name first, his name is Djarin Din. And it's like, huh, I didn't think about that when I heard it, but Din Grogu sounds super cool, and so does Din Djarin. So it's always just going to be, now that we know canonically, because they never actually referenced that, we just assumed that's how it was until they named Grogu. Like I said, I didn't even realize that until I watched the review, but it was like, oh yeah, that is what that means. If Din comes first, that they're doing like a first name or last name first sort of thing. So it's like, his name is Djarin Din. That's crazy, but you know, that's what they call him, that's what he goes by. So it's basically the same thing as a first and last name, depending on how you want to look at it. But that was a cool like mini reveal. We got the Mythosaur at the very end, so it's like, okay, we thought Bo-Katan might ride it by the end of the season. I was like, maybe Grogu could ride it at some point, which would be very simple. The whole Force thing, and it's just like, well, that's easy enough. He kind of did a Rancor, didn't he? Like, get on top of the thing at one point, or maybe he just calmed it down. It's like, he's already done that. It's just like 100 times bigger, you know, 1,000,000 times bigger. But that would be interesting. That probably wouldn't be for a super long time, but I was like, okay, they didn't really do much with the Mythosaur. They just showed that it was still there, and it's like, it kind of woke up in the living waters, like, there's something happening there. So they might push it super quick. Who knows, give him a growth spurt or something like that. Also, I thought for sure, there's like, for half a second, when it was like, oh, he's too young to speak, and then they put the camera on, I was like, is this about to happen? Because he's been like kind of saying stuff and agreeing, and you know, we've had, you know, the buttons and stuff, and then it was just like, is it about to happen? And then he doesn't say anything, but it was like, okay, it was just a squeak. But they were holding on his face for a minute, and I was like, what if he just speaks? Like, I'm ready. And like, you know, what voice are they gonna choose for him? But I was like, it might happen. I'm like, he's gonna, it would have been a lot for sure, because it's like he goes from nothing to like reciting an entire creed. I'm like, that's a huge, that's a 0 to 100 moment. But it was like, okay, they're still saving it. But all I know, I'm like working backwards, but it's just, the ending is just like, man, where are we heading and all that stuff. So that's how it's gonna end up being. But them doing that, I was like, wow, that was really cool. Like everything they did, you know, him using the Force at the end, amazing, absolutely amazing. So we got Grogu, we got Din Grogu, we got the Mythosaur. Who knows what'll happen there? But man, the action was so good. Moff Gideon in the outfit, which apparently is like a full-on cybernetic outfit, because they didn't have like the robot noises in the last episode. And so I was like, did something happen where, you know, I mean, obviously they kind of hit that audio, but I was like, is he, for a second I thought he was robotic, and then it was like, oh, it's meant to just be the suit, because all the suits are always just padding, and that's how it's been for like, you know, decades at this point. Every time I see somebody in that, it's like, I can't think of, you know, robotic parts unless you're an actual robot. Like if you're Darth Vader, it's like, okay, I could see them adding robotic voices, because it's like, that dude's effed up, he's all chopped up in wires and stuff. But anyone else just wearing a trooper outfit or anything like that, I'm like, the robot noises felt kind of weird, so it threw me off a little, because I'm like, oh, he's cybernetic, and they just kind of hid that. And then it's like, oh no, I think it's just the suit. Because especially when he was giving the whole speech about you know, they officially showed us like those were clones of him, and he was breeding them so that they were Force sensitive, and that they could have just that extra little step of evolution above him as a character. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. And then the robotic noises were there. I was like, oh, he's upgraded himself. Like since we last saw him, he's like got like cybernetic implants and stuff like that. But you know, kind of like more the old school style, where it's like super cool and hidden, and not like having to go to the shop where they play the crazy music in Boba Fett. But that wasn't it. It was just the suit. And I was like, oh, that was weird to me. But an epic fight. I absolutely loved it. And also this whole episode, they killed somebody in the last episode. And I legit at one point, when I thought Axel Wolf was dying on the ship, I was like, they're gonna kill 2 people in a row. And one of them even has a face. It's not like 2 people behind helmets. It's like, no, this dude has an actual face. We've seen him before. And it's like, that's crazy. And then I was like, he lived. That's insane. Like he did the G.I. Joe and blew up the ship and left out at the last second. He got like the parachute, you know, like the old school parachute. It was like, sweet, he's alive. I don't care. Like, it's cool. They didn't kill anybody, but there were definitely moments where I was like, I think, when the Darksaber broke, I was like, they cannot break the Darksaber and then kill Bo-Katan right after too. Like, that would be the darkest thing in the universe. I'm like, they can't possibly do that, right? And of course, there's moments where it's like, maybe Din's gonna die here. I'm not really sure. The armorer, who is not the spy, neither is Axel, I don't know who that extra spy was from the last episode. That is one thing that I think they did not wrap up. It was like, who were the two spies? So we're gonna have to read about that, and they'll be like, it was actually this person is what we were kind of referencing, or this action or something. It's gonna be like some underground deep cut reference type answer or something, because there were not two spies and everybody was wrong. Because it was like, oh, who's the second spy? We were all wrong. And I think it makes sense considering every single episode has been a double meaning or two characters. I don't think it's crazy that everyone thought that. That's literally how the entire season has gone out. Like, oh, this was that person, but so was this person. And then there was one spy, unless they're going to push it into the future, which still doesn't work with the whole convention of doing that in this season. Because then it's like, oh, they decided to go with the spy thing. Well, that's weird that they didn't do that in the episode or in the season where they introduced the fact that someone might be a spy. It's a weird thing to have that's meant to be like a crumb, when it's like, well, you can't make a crumb for something in the future when every single episode is like, this is the specific thing that it's involving. You can't put a crumb out for something that's coming in like 4 or 5 years. Like, that's not really fair. You can't do that, and have everybody assuming like that, because that's what everyone would think. So that was unfortunate, but that's literally, for me, it was so minute that I was just like, okay, none of them being bad is actually what I prefer, because I like all the characters, the couple of characters that we have any interest in as far as names or at least monikers, with the armorer. So I'm glad ultimately that none of them were considered spies. And if they do save it for later, then I guess they do. And it was still a bad choice to do that this way. But as of now, they're all good guys. And it's like, cool. I would prefer that, to be completely honest. So nobody died. Everybody's good, which means we get to have the characters longer, and maybe they could just, have them betray them later. But once again, I personally hate that, because I'm like, it would be a weird thing to double back on. And if it was always planned, that's like I said, it would just be like the dumbest way to plan it, from my personal opinion, to like tease that and think, oh, we're all wrong. It's like, surprised you weren't. And it's like, well, you still gotta tease that in the season and not have done anything with it. Like, we could have learned a secret that even the main characters don't find out, and that's fine if that's like the tease or something, but there is nothing as far as the spy. So it's like, okay, we'll see what happens. As far as the return, that's an interesting one too. I think the double meanings for the return is like, this season has been about the Mandalorians, and it's kind of like, this is the return of the Mandalorian, like Din Djarin, and now, Din Grogu, and the Mandalorians are over there on Mandalore. But this is the return of them going home, and the return of him doing his own thing and officially going his own way, officially adopting his son. He's like, he is my boy. And it's like, that's nice. That's really nice. So him and his son, are just out in their, country road house, which is really funny. It was full on Western look. And he even had like the little things on the front to kick his feet up on. I was like, that's good. That's good imagery. So I thought that was funny. IG-11 comes back. That's really good. Somebody is burning something in their oven. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I just heard it. But I love what they did. And I think that's the return. It's the Mandalorians going back to Mandalore, but it's like the return of this series that a lot of people probably want back, with the way this season went. I loved it, but a lot of people were not too happy about it. So I think this kind of wraps all of that up in a neat little bow, where it's like, okay, here's what it is. Here, don't worry, we didn't kill Den. That's not happening. It's not like transferring from him to Bo-Katan and just like leaving him behind and stuff. It's like, all right, here it is. They're still separated. He did that thing. He was teamed up. It was the whole season, get my people back to where they belong. And all right, me and my son are getting the F out of here. And there you go. That's the official answer. The Mandalorians are there. The Mandalorian is over here. And so now we can still have his show. He can do cool stuff for the Republic, and it's like, oh, references to this, references to that, other things happening in the galaxy that are like from old comics and this and that. You can do all that stuff in the Mandalorian as he goes on just random missions. Some missions don't have to be for the New Republic. It could just be a cool thing. So I think they're there. I think the next season, whenever that ends up coming out, is going to go back to what people really wanted, especially from the first season. It was definitely more like that. Season 2 was for sure like the super structured season, and then this season was very structured, but not in the same way. It was definitely the pacing of the structure was very different. That's what it was. I think it was still structured very well. It was probably the pacing of the structure where it's like, okay, people wanted obviously more hints and things like that, but it wrapped up so well. I wonder if there are people that actually really enjoy this season because they actually did it. At least I think they tied it up very well for anyone on both sides. Like, I was already happy, so I loved it. But for everyone that was kind of like, like the last couple episodes and some simple stuff happening, people weren't too happy. So I'm very curious if that's how you felt, which was a lot of people. I would love to know your thoughts on how things ultimately wrapped up, because I felt like it was like, oh, here's all the answers that everybody was worried about. He's still alive. They're separated. This is what's happening. And the future's kind of just open again. It was like, okay, there you go. We got everything. We got everything we needed. Super diehard Mandalorian fans like myself, we got Mandalore. Whenever it's in there, it's in there. And then we still have the Mandalorian, because when it was just about him, I was still like, cool. Still my favorite thing in Star Wars. Plus, there are a couple of other Mandalorians, like in the first season when everybody was on Navarro. I was like, cool. There's a couple other Mandalorians. That's really sweet. That's nice. He's a Mandalorian. And that's kind of all I need. Then it was more related to, I felt like Jedi and stuff because of Grogu in that first season. Compared to even relating, to Mandalorians. And then things started to change once we hit that post-credit sequence where this came into action. And then it was like, oh no, this is for Mandalorians. So this feels like the ultimate culmination of that. And now we just get to see the future, because it was a second battle of Mandalore. We had it in Clone Wars. We got it, again here in live action, which is insane, with them coming down, which was definitely the part where I thought the armorer could die. Cause I'm like, she's still going in with that hammer and like the steel pickups. I can't even think what I'm trying to say. The steel grips. And I'm like, okay, that's all she needs. She's just going through bashing people in the head. People got blasters and they're flying around, and she's just like, a real solid whack to the face. I was like, all right, she lived. She's good. So a lot of crazy action. I absolutely love that. Everything was there. It was the battle. They defeated Moff Gideon, and I swear, I don't know if it's in his contract or something, but Giancarlo Esposito has like two of the greatest deaths in cinematic history, where it's just like Breaking Bad was such a good like moment for his character. Sorry if that's spoilers. Sorry. But man, that is, I'm gonna have to put a spoiler warning for that now. But anyway, we're gonna talk about this. His death in that was so good, and then this was just like the Star Wars equivalent. Visually, maybe not in the same way, because that was just like a holy crap moment. But story-wise, it was like, holy crap. Like, the villain is dead. Like, the dude who was coming in with the Darth Maul stuff, which sadly, very sad. If there was anything about the show that would have threw it up another level of insanity, was just being like, Darth Maul. Just reference Darth Maul, and then it's like, my two favorite things are together again. But it's just like, sad we didn't get that, because definitely the horns and stuff like that were like, that's what made it seem like the armor was definitely the spikes. Like, this is the only dude who's come up with spikes. Although it's been referenced, what if she's just like, Darth Maul's species? And that's only possible because it is a creed. It's not like, just a lineage of people. It's just like, it's a creed. So it's just like anyone can be it. But it's like, it could be that she just happens to have spikes. She could just be from Dathomir. But it's like, I wish, like I said, two great things, two favorite things in Star Wars coming together, like Darth Maul and the Darksaber. It was like, that would have made me super duper happy. I would have lost my mind. I would have lost my mind. But definitely loved everything we got either way. All the tension that was there. I knew they wouldn't kill Grogu, but I was still kind of panicked. I'll admit, I was watching, I was just like, nah, that's ridiculous. The whole show would be canceled if they kill Grogu off. It'd be like, the whole show's dead. The whole show would have been just disappeared. And like, there's no more merch sales. There's nothing. It's like, you killed the baby. The show, they'd be canceled. All of Disney would be canceled if they killed Grogu. But I love what they did. I like the tension, him running around with the Praetorian guards, seeing them come back. It was definitely cool. That was another reason I was worried about Den. But, he was at full health. They were, switching villains and going back and forth and stuff. It was very cool. They had, some epic video game moments. Like, it's a father and son moment. So we got, he's like, it's God of War type stuff going on. You got Kratos and Atreus fighting off the enemies together. And then he does like the ultra video game gauntlet where you go up the hallway and beat a couple people up at a time, upgrading your weapons as you go along. It's like, all right, it's the end of the game gauntlet before you get to the boss fight. And it's like every skill that you've learned, and as you upgrade, and then you get to the boss and you like reset. And it's like, that is so cool. Like, it just looked cool. He was calling that last one a little early, I felt, because I'm like, he was shooting like the last dude, and I'm like, he's calling the Chuck a little early, because I'm like, what's he gonna do? Like push him into the other guy? Like that doesn't seem like a better tactic to me. But he was just like, he said it like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, he didn't even kill the dude until the thing went off. So I'm like, I think he was kind of rushing it a little bit. That's how it felt, at least. I'm like, you're gonna suck right now. But I'm sure some minute change is what he had in mind, but it was still an epic moment. I love the fact that it was classic Star Wars. I didn't think that those pits were like endless pits where they just fall down forever. Because I'm like, it's just little dip platform, cool light things. It's just smoke and death. Like it's just an open chasm. I wasn't expecting that. I don't think anyone saw that coming, and they fall off, and I'm like, there's not ground right there. That's just smoke and nothingness. For what? Why isn't it just a solid ground? Like, I mean, I don't know why. I guess it would go down, but I don't know. I guess that's extra secure. I don't know. I'm like, you could just make it solid and it's fine, because it takes more work to like cut the pieces out and make it look pretty and like perfect squares and stuff. You could just make it one, like just drill down and flatten it. It was like, no, we're gonna open these spaces up, put the fog machine down there, and if you fall down there, you'll think it's the ground, but it's actually like just infinite death. You'll just fall forever. Like, cool. That was the surprise of the episode for me. There was no spy, but there were trapdoor ground falls. And I was just like, oh, that's just smoke. That was weird. I loved it because it was very cool, but I was like, that was weird. I did not see that coming, and that seems extremely excessive to make that. It was just like, huh. Infinite chasm drop. I love the fact that they used it where the first guy he beat had a gun and he was reaching out for the gun, and then he fell, and that's obviously how I realized, like, oh, he fell away. He just fell away. He couldn't get that gun back. And I was like, that was actually kind of cool. He's like, oh crap, like dang, I needed that gun, and he had to still do level 2. So I was like, I love that whole sequence going through, and then eventually ending with the guns, which I don't think those are his guns, because the sound effect is different. Like the guns he picked up look just like his guns, but he also doesn't dual wield. So I was like, it wouldn't make sense that if they only took his gun, they would only have one of those guns, unless he's had 2 this entire time. And I didn't realize that because I got the Hot Toys figure. I'm pretty sure he only has like 1 pistol. So that's always been his thing. He didn't dual wield. And this episode, when he picked those up, he started dual wielding. I was like, we haven't seen that before. And it didn't even really register until it got like down to the Gideon fight, where he's like, he's doing like full on Max Payne style stuff. Like he's sliding on the ground, shooting the bullets at the same time. There's some video game moments, and I absolutely loved them. But him dual wielding is a really cool upgrade. Like I said, I didn't even register it really in the episode until it was like, getting to the very end. And then it was like, he's dual wielding. Like his guns, all I thought was like, man, the gun sounds super sweet. I didn't realize it. And then it's like, holy crap, he's dual wielding and he's really good at it. So now we might actually see that going forward, as well as like his new thing, where it's like, they took the spear. That was really unfortunate. Obviously, no Darksaber at all, at the moment, but it was like, well, he lost the spear, he lost the rifle. That's what I missed the most. Like, I really wish, I hope he gets another rifle, because I thought that was such a cool thing to have, like the sniper shot. And I feel like they missed out on using it enough. I think in the first season, it does get a decent amount of use, but season 2, I felt like he barely used it, compared to the first. So I missed that. That's what I missed the most. The Beskar spear just looks really cool, and like bow staffs and spears, but I was just like, dang. And I've said this before in some other review, but that's how it is. I'm just like, man, I wish he had that rifle more than anything else. But she's dual wielding now, and it looks super cool. Like I said, I love the sound effect. Unless I've just been missing it the entire series every time he shoots, and maybe he just doesn't shoot enough for me to even register it. But I was like, it sounds really good in this, so I love it. They're both like jet black, and I don't think his gun is jet black. It's dark, but I think his gun is like a, sort of grayish silver type of deal. I don't think his guns were both purely jet black this season. And plus, like I said, it was 2 guns instead of just 1, and it's still kind of weird that they have those, because they don't seem like Imperial blasters and stuff. So I still find it a little weird that they have those, but technically they've just been wiping out Mandalorians this whole time, so a bunch of them could have that gun. I don't know, but it seemed weird to me that they had like the exact same type of gun that he had. That's why it was throwing me off, because I'm like, well, that's weird. It was weird. I was thinking like, really fortunate that that guy just happened to have his weapon on him, and then I'm like, oh no, these are 2 different guns that look the same. They look cooler, because I like the pure jet black. It was like, they look sweeter, but they're also the same, but probably not because of the sound effect. Once again, probably just the fact that he shot a bunch. I was like, that's weird. So that was something random I noticed. I was like, it's the exact same weapon, unless they were all using that, which I don't think they were. I don't think any of the troopers used like the single hand blaster. It was always just the bounty hunters. Maybe like right at the end, they started to show some people that had like kind of like almost the pure pistol blasters like the Mandalorians have, like, you know, kind of like Bo-Katan's weapons. But I'm pretty sure they didn't do that. I think they were all using like the classic, you know, almost rifle style gun. And it's like, still sweet, but a random thing that I noticed, along with, you know, who is the other spy. But I still loved it. Once again, you know, minute things that I just like, I question it. There might be an answer for that one, but very minute things that I really question. The episode was amazing for me. I love the action. I love the Mandalorian stuff. I loved everything they did with Moff Gideon. I think that could be another thing that upsets people. He did really only come back for 2 episodes, which is really funny to think about, because I'm like, you know, it was the build up the whole season, and then it was like, oh, he's gone. Unless that was a clone, which I definitely thought that for sure, because that's, especially with the robotic thing, that was a part of why I was like, what if this is a different, that was the first thing I thought, was what if he did actually die and then they got a clone out like just in time. So that didn't end up being the case, but Force Sensitive is really interesting. And sure, he was on Mandalore when we saw him die and all those clones blow up. But what if you had like one extra though? Just like a super emergency, not really ready yet type situation that just so happens to work. That would be interesting, because they could do it. They definitely, he still has this spy out there, and we haven't seen what she's doing outside of just kind of sticking with the New Republic. So where does she shift to, you know, at this point? So maybe, you know, that's where Thrawn can come in. But I thought that was interesting. It is possible. You know, all he was doing that Empire, you know, the Emperor type stuff, where it's like, let me get a bunch of clones and all this. Everybody be using clones, and this cloning is actually a lot bigger component than you might think. Even before Clone Wars actually came out, George Lucas must have been like, I got a name for it, and then they just threw cloning into like all the books and stuff. So cloning has always been like a really crazy thing in Star Wars. It's always been at the forefront, oddly enough. So it's funny that it's like in the movies, it's just starting to become that more prominently, even, you know, with the shows and stuff. But it's always been there. It's weird to think about that now. I never really considered that. I'm like, man, Star Wars is like built on cloning. Like when you think, it is like quite literally built on just people cloning themselves and all sorts of crazy stuff. So that's very interesting. But like after all this time, that just dawned on me, like, holy crap, Star Wars is legit. Just like, it's not a Skywalker saga, it's a cloning saga. That's what this series is. But you might have another one out there. We don't really know. I'm excited for Ahsoka, so we'll see what happens there. I like the split at the end. Personally, I think it's great to have Din go back to just being off with his son, and they just do side missions. I think that makes for a cooler show, because if he's wrapped in with what all the Mandalorians are doing, they'd lose an entire series. Because if they did that, then they wouldn't be able to be like, hey, it's the Mandalorian. People would kind of feel like how they feel right now. So they're like, we might get a full Mandalorian series. I don't know what they would call it, considering you have like the Mandalorian, unless they change the name, you know, Djarin and Grogu. I don't see that happening, but something's going to happen, you know, with the Mandalorian stuff. And they got this movie. They've officially announced there's going to be a movie to wrap up all the Filoni stuff. And I cannot wait to see that. They're going to all be in movie theaters, and it's going to be so nice. These last 2 episodes easily could be in the movies, like this and the last 4 Clone Wars. Those are the 2 things that should be in theaters, some special event or something. I would definitely pay money to see these last 2 episodes together. And then the last 4 Clone Wars, 100% movie quality content from Star Wars. So I absolutely loved it. Had a fantastic time with the whole season. I was very fortunate this season. I know a lot of people are unhappy, but man, I was like, I said it. I actually did a little reaction, which is, who knows when that'll come out, because I didn't record any video. But I was like, I am blessed to be a Star Wars fan right now. Like, I love the Mandalorian stuff, and this is just peak Mandalorian lore. Aside from never mentioning Satine, Bo-Katan Kryze has a sister. Her name is Duchess Satine. So there you go. They never said her name. They never referenced it. That's a huge thing. You should watch Clone Wars. Once again, built on cloning. So aside from like that very minute thing, they've touched on like all the Mandalorian stuff. And then we're going into Ahsoka, where one of the main characters is a Mandalorian who did some really important stuff on Mandalore. They're definitely going to be tied in for sure in Ahsoka, at least in some, like I said, they could do like 1 episode. This is how everything is, and they probably will. But that's where we are now. I absolutely love this season. I loved just getting to see Mandalorians. You know, of course, we had our celebrity cameo episode. I know how people felt about that, but we got Jack Black, and that's super cool. And we got Christopher Lloyd, which is even cooler. You know, super cool. I don't listen to Lizzo, so for me, it's just like, oh, hey, that's Lizzo. I'm sure, you know, there are a lot of people I'm sure who were super happy about that. I wonder if that small sector people, well, it wouldn't be that small, I guess. If you're watching Star Wars, you're probably already like, if you're anybody, you probably like Jack Black. But if you're already watching Star Wars, you probably know Christopher Lloyd. So if you just happen to like Lizzo, which is popular now, probably a bunch of people that are like, all three of them. It's like, okay. Somebody had like just the trifecta episode. I got 2 out of 3. I don't mind Lizzo. I'm just like, whatever. She wasn't in the Pick of Destiny, and she wasn't in Back to the Future. So it was like, sorry. I'm just saying. But cameos were fine by me. Also, speaking of cameo, Dave Filoni was in this episode. When they went to the bar, he was in this episode. I'm sure in no way, shape, or form this is a reference or like hint or anything, but I'm gonna probably put it on Twitter that it is, because I'm in my head, I'm like, that's a real Cad Bane looking hat. And I'm like, just what if that was like foreshadowing and a hint? Like, this is what Cad Bane's new hat is gonna look like when we bring him back in live action, because he didn't actually die at the end of Book of Boba Fett. And I would love that, because that was a way cool. That was like the animated look style hat where it was like flat. Like, go back and check it out. It was like full on, like it was like the perfect Cad Bane looking hat. That was probably my favorite one in the series, where it was just like the little cup in the center, perfectly flat out. And I'm just saying, it was a really good hat. And then they could just bring that back live action. That would be nice. That'd be real nice. Doubt it's a hint, but it was a real Cad Bane looking hat, and that's all I'm saying. So, thanks for checking this out. If you couldn't tell by the rambling and obviously the baked sushi, this was obviously a 420 review. It's also, of course, being in the title. Excuse me. So if you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate your support. I'm glad you're able to make it. I'm sure I paused way more than I realize in my brain right now. But thanks for checking this out. I would love to know your thoughts on this season finale. The season as a whole, of course, with everything that's happened. Would love to know your thoughts on the whole season, where we're headed, all this stuff, how you guys feel about it as a whole. Because for me, best season ever. I absolutely love it. I can completely understand why everyone else would say season 2, because season 2 was pretty freaking great. But this was better for me. It just felt extra personal, despite the pain that caused when they like just crushed the Darksaber. Aside from that, personally, it was really good. Everything that they did for me personally was really nice, except for hurting my heart like that. But I'm excited for the next Darksaber. Whatever they do, I'm looking forward to it. But absolutely love the finale, obviously. Would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Shameless plug, I do stream, so definitely check out my streaming channel. Link in the description. I'll probably put a link as like in title. Excuse me, God mouth. One of the end title videos. But next week, Star Wars Jedi Survivor comes out, so I would definitely be streaming that. I don't know if I'm gonna stream that whole game, because I'm sure it'll be even longer than the last one, and they might add side missions. Who knows? But I'm gonna stream somehow as much of that game as I possibly can. So definitely look forward to that. I guess it'll be like next Thursday, at midnight and stuff. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys were there, because I love that first game. I'm really hyped. I'm really looking forward to that one. So definitely check that stream out next week. The last game that I did was Resident Evil 4, so check all of that stuff out. I'd greatly appreciate it. And like I said, everything you guys thought about this episode, season as a whole, where we're headed in the future, please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.
You hungry? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. You hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Like I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Like I'm Shaggy. Man, I'm hungry. Man, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Yeah, man. You hungry?